It's finally time we got to talk about Scream 2022. Now, if you've been with the franchise from the beginning, if you sat in the theater back in 96 and watched Drew Barrymore get gutted before her name even came off the opening credits, if you have been walking alongside Sid throughout her entire character arc, then you know the Scream series has always had a certain rhythm to it. Wes Craven didn't just direct horror, he dissected it. He peeled it open and he showed you the insides while still making you scream, laugh, and most importantly, care about the people inside the nightmare. But Scream 5, let's be real, feels different. And not in a bold reinvention kind of way. It feels like a cover song, one that hits some of the notes, maybe even belts a few well, but doesn't understand what made the original as successful as it was. Because Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson weren't just poking fun at horror tropes. They were redefining the genre by examining it, living in it, and then turning it inside out. Look, I love that different people have different on ramps for Scream, and there are some wild tier lists for all of the sequels. But the reality is, post Wes Craven, it's almost like the universe, in like a very comic book kind of way, went on an offshoot that is not really connected to the previous films, maybe in continuity, but not by any other standard. And yeah, Scream 2 was meta, so was Scream 4, but they never lost the human story. Yes, they tried to comment on what they were commenting on by doing it, and then showcasing the flaws in it or doing it better than some of their contemporaries. But for the first time, it felt like Scream had hit the territory that some of its contemporaries hit, like with Nightmare, like with Friday the 13th, like with Halloween, where you get to those sequels that are just like, okay, yeah, I mean, they're part of the franchise as a whole, but one of the most important things that distinguishes Scream 2022 from its predecessors is that movies like 2 and 4, they never lost the human story. They never lost sight of Sid, what she was going through, how the trauma evolved, how she evolved. The satire was layered into her survival. Scream 2 commented on sequels, sure, but it did it while building a grounded and painful arc for the core three. Scream 4 dove headfirst into remake culture and social media narcissism, but it felt like a Scream movie. It had weight, it had something to say. Scream 5, though, it feels like it wants to talk about fandom and toxic internet culture the way that Wes once talked about horror trends, but it doesn't fully commit to the bit. It doesn't thread it into the DNA of the characters in the same way. Instead, it ends up being a movie about legacy that forgets to honor the legacy that it's referencing. It's a film of moments, individual beats that can work in isolation. I'll use Dewey's death scene as the prime example, right? You're showing that your movie has stakes and you want to make it as memorable as possible because it's one of the original characters and arguably the second most important character to the entire franchise. And so you want to create a tense experience in the hospital with a lot of scenes that make you feel trapped, and it makes it feel like it has weight from a visual standpoint. And the interaction between Dewey and Ghostface results in something that has a lot of shock value that will convey that, oh, okay, they're killing original characters here. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it plays as a moment that does very little for the overall story. And really, upon further examination of the entirety of the story, most fans count it kind of like Randy's death, where it's just largely a mistake. It's just largely a tone deaf kill to try to convey weight. From my point of view, there's just something about the way that Radio Silence handles the characters that just feels off. Not disrespectful, but disconnected. Sid and Gale don't feel fully integrated. They kind of feel like DLC. They show up late, they say the right things, and they help the ending. But they're not embedded in the film's soul the way they were in every Wes installment. And Sam, our new lead, is interesting on paper. And I really do think that Melissa Barrera is criminally underrated in certain regards. I think she brings an entirely different energy that if she could have just gotten away from the direct comparisons that were always going to be there, considering Sid was not on screen to Sidney, then I think she could have brought something different, something unique to the screen. And honestly, if you're the type that's going to jump on the internet and harass an actor for something that you didn't like, then get a pulse and get a life. Seriously, you're not allowed to be on the internet. That's such lame behavior. Don't like what you don't like what you like. That's a beautiful thing about movies and content is there's something for everybody. But if you feel like you need to harass somebody because you don't like what they did, then dude, you are part of the problem and not a part of the solution. Idea of the next generation, right? The ripple effects of trauma on the next generation and getting a chance to see, oh, okay, Billy Loomis's daughter and all of that. I think there's a lot of interesting beats in all of that. The whole seeing visions of him thing. See, I'm mixed on that because it felt like Radio Silence was dangling the carrot the entire time. Like they were making a subversive movie just for the sake of making a subversive movie. But a lot of what they've done up to this point has been a lot of that. If you look through their list of movies, you can find quite a few examples where there's this approach that feels like, oh, we know what you want, and we're not going to give it to you. And as a matter of fact, we're going to give you something different and call it subverting expectations. And the way that this all focuses on Billy Loomis just feels like a very blatant attempt to capitalize without fully committing on the whole returning killer from the first one thing that everybody is going bug nuts over when it comes to Stu. The film gestures towards inner darkness and generational trauma, but it doesn't follow through in a way that feels earned because that's only part of the conversation. You've got this internal darkness, and then you also have the killer's motives of wanting to finally create a good sequel again to the original and toxic fan culture. And in the midst of all of it, you've got Dewey, who is just so criminally done dirty in the entirety of just everything about where he's at and the way it all goes down and the whole nine yards. Like it just is not a good look for the character. And you have all of these individual pieces that really could be interesting, but as a cohesive whole, see, Wes Craven made films that held a mirror to horror, but he also made sure that the people in the reflection mattered. That's what made Scream different. It wasn't just clever, it had heart. In Scream 5, for all of its callbacks and for all of its clever moments, struggles to find that same heart. It's sleek, it's meta, it's bloody. If you're the type of person that loves Carnage Candy, then this is the Scream movie for you. Without a doubt, these two Scream movies, 5 and 6, are your Scream movies if you want to see Ghostface but bloodier, Scream but bloodier, and you want to see a post Halloween 2018 influence on a Scream legacy sequel. If that sounds awesome to you and you don't necessarily care about what it does to the overall franchise and you want those moments, then 1000% check this one out. 1000% you will watch this and you will come out the other side being like, that was a popcorn flick. But when it comes to actually furthering the franchise as a whole and adding something interesting or unique to the franchise, this does the same thing that the rest of these legacy sequels have been doing. And that's why I don't want the conversation to just sit at the level of Wes Scream and Radio Silence Scream. I want this thing to end. This is one of those franchises that needs to go the way of the dodo. This is not the same thing as the Shape. This is not the same thing as a hockey mask clad killer. This is not the same thing. And I would argue Wes's other popular franchise is going through the exact same thing that Scream is going through, except for the rights to Scream were grabbed and Nightmare is sitting dormant. But you try to revamp it, you try to change that core foundation of the franchise, and you end up just with a mess. And that's why I don't think those legacy sequels work nearly as well. But I also say that about Michael Myers, and it's just kind of Halloween is just kind of a shell of what the original was, in my opinion. And that's why I think these legacy sequels absolutely need to end because they're just dragging it out for money. And I hope that these last two movies, if it is two movies, are wonderful. I hope they are a fantastic capstone. But wow, if there's anything that 5 and 6 show us is it is time to take it home. Look, this isn't about hating the movie. If this is your favorite Scream movie, then you need to get your head examined, but at least you have a favorite Scream movie. There's good stuff here. It's just that for those of us that lived with those characters and this world for decades, you can feel when the soul of the thing has shifted. Wes Craven didn't just create a horror franchise, he built a language, he built a world. And while Scream 2022 is speaking that language, it sometimes feels like reading from Google Translate. Let me know, what did you think of this movie down below? Are you excited for 7? Sound off down below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.